I'm holding Dad's certificate from CW Transport, dated 1975. This is to certify that Roy E. Skoog is a member of the Million Mile Club, having driven 1 million miles, or 25,000 hours, without a preventable accident. 25,000 hours. That's 12 and a half years of full-time work behind the wheel with perfect performance. No accidents, no screw-ups. Just competence, mile after mile after mile. This certificate? It's proof that no one could argue with. Evidence of worth that couldn't be mocked or dismissed. Achievement measured not in words but in miles. The work layer of this project tells a completely different story than everything we've excavated so far. Here, Dad wasn't the rejected 4F, or the mocked churchgoer, or the silenced husband. Here, Dad was a man whose competence spoke so loudly that nobody questioned his worth. Dad drove trucks for over 35 years. But this wasn't just driving. This was logistics, navigation, timing, safety, customer service, all rolled into one demanding profession that required serious skill. In the cab, his speech difficulties became completely irrelevant. He communicated through CB radio, using the specialized language of the road, finding out hyperlocal information like the reason for that traffic jam on I-35W westbound, or the best way to pull out of a tight loading dock. The trucking community had its own vocabulary, its own culture, its own way of measuring worth. They measured worth by ability to handle an 80,000-pound vehicle safely through urban traffic. Dad's perfect driving record spoke louder than his imperfect speech ever could. In the brotherhood of drivers, Dad found something he'd been denied everywhere else. Unqualified respect, based purely on merit. Fellow truckers recognized competence when they saw it. That million-mile certificate wasn't charity. It was acknowledgement of superior professional performance. For the first time in his life, being different didn't matter. Only being good at what you did mattered. I remember our family road trips when Dad would tune into trucker frequencies, and suddenly he was part of conversations spanning hundreds of miles. Drivers warning each other about speed traps, sharing road conditions, and checking in on each other. In this context, Dad wasn't the quiet man in church pews. He was a veteran driver whose voice was welcomed, whose expertise was valued. But maybe Dad's truest voice was in his woodworking shop. Here, surrounded by tools of creation, Dad expressed himself through craft in ways words never could. Benches, children's chairs, mirrors, desks, rocking chairs, end tables, clocks. Each piece made with specific family members in mind, gifted to us kids and grandkids. Dad rarely sold his pieces. Just like Mom's quilts and aprons were her art, Dad's art was creating furniture and wood crafts. I'm recording this podcast at the desk that he made me decades ago. The wood is still solid and the joints are still tight. The surface is still very smooth. Every time I sit down to work, I'm literally supported by Dad's competence and surrounded by evidence of his skill. He was always coming back from the lumber yard, always had cuts on his hands and forearms that would just dry up and get crusty. He couldn't be bothered with bandages. In the evenings, you'd find him in his lazy boy, reading a history book or deep in a Star Tribune article. Otherwise, he was constantly tinkering around the house, working in the woodshop or at his workbench in the basement next to the sauna. The woodworking shop was also where I witnessed Dad's small rebellions. Even though swearing was forbidden in our house, I'd catch him muttering under his breath when he hit his thumb with a hammer. Even though worldly music was prohibited, I'd hear Dad humming Hank Williams like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry and Low and Lonely while he worked, singing fragments of old bluegrass songs. His voice, made rougher by dentures, found freedom in that garage space. But what really gets me is Dad's connection to country music went deeper. In the top drawer of his dresser, wrapped in a threadbare handkerchief, he kept a harmonica. He'd pull it out rarely, but when he did, the sound was beautiful. Haunting melodies that matched those Hank Williams songs about loneliness and being misunderstood. I wonder when he learned to play. Probably in his single days before marriage and children and church expectations. Dad could have been a country musician. Instead, he became a truck driver who played harmonica alone in his bedroom. Another voice the world never got to hear. The irony was not lost on me as a kid. A man whose voice was mocked at church, finding solace in country singers who sang about sadness, loneliness, and being misunderstood. These small rebellions revealed who Dad was beneath all those constraints. Dad loved hard candies, those yellow butterscotch ones, peppermints, strawberry-flavored ones. He also loved those soft orange circus peanuts, and even those Boston baked beans, those candy-coated peanuts. Remember those? His car console was always scattered with evidence of these small daily comforts. On Saturdays, Dad had friends who'd come over for sauna. They'd swap stories over coffee lunch, post-sauna refreshments, and I'd eavesdrop, sneaking cookies. These lifelong friendships showed me another side of Dad, part of a community that appreciated him exactly as he was. When these friends died, Dad's friendship circle dwindled. When Dad retired in 1989, he didn't just quit working. He found new purpose transporting people with Down syndrome from group homes to their jobs twice daily. This work gave him joy in ways church attendance never could. Here was a community that appreciated his service without judging his speech. His passengers didn't care how he sounded. They cared that he showed up reliably, drove safely, and treated them with kindness. Working with developmentally disabled adults, Dad found people who understood difference, who didn't judge based on speech patterns. His gentle nature, his patience, and his acceptance of difference, qualities that made him a target elsewhere, made him perfect for this work. This discovery of dignity through work, of finding voice through competence when other avenues are closed, these themes continue in my newsletter, Things I Meant to Tell You, on Substack. If you're drawn to stories about how our parents found their worth in a world that often questioned it, join my community of readers who understand complicated family stories. The furniture Dad crafted represents something profound about love expressed through physical objects. Each piece required hours of planning, measuring, cutting, sanding, and assembly. Each represents attention, patience, skill, and the desire to create something lasting. Using his desk while recording connects me to his continuing presence in ways mere memories cannot. The solid wood under my hands, the smooth surface where I rest my notebooks, drawers that still slide easily after decades, all of these carry his love into my daily work. Those upholstered toddler chairs he made, waiting hopefully for my children, they represent Dad's faith in the future, his belief that love continues across generations. Even if they're never used as intended, they remain evidence of his hope. What I'm discovering is that Dad's practical approach to love wasn't just personality. It was necessity. When verbal expression was difficult, when social recognition was denied, when church excluded him from traditional service, Dad found other ways to matter. His million-mile certificate, his handcrafted furniture, his reliable service to vulnerable passengers, these were Dad's way of writing his worth into the world when his voice was deemed insufficient. But they were also expressions of a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of leadership. Dad understood that actions could speak louder than words, that reliability was its own eloquence, that showing up consistently was its own charisma. This work layer reveals a man who found dignity through competence when social recognition was denied, who expressed love through craft when words failed him, who built his reputation mile by mile, project by project, day by day of showing up. This wasn't the man who disappeared at social gatherings. This wasn't the silent figure in church pews. This was a master craftsman, a professional driver, a reliable service provider, a man whose competence spoke for itself. But it raises a question. What did it cost Dad to find his voice only in work? What parts of him remained unexpressed even in the arenas where he excelled? This is what the work layer leaves me with. Dad didn't just work to make a living. He worked to make a statement about his worth in a world that questioned it. Every mile, every project, every day of reliable service was Dad saying, I may not speak smoothly, but I do exceptional work. I may not lead from the front, but I show up. I may not have the voice you expect, but I have my hands that create lasting value. In a world that measured men by their words, Dad measured himself by his work. And by that standard, he was extraordinary. Next week, we uncover the surface findings, the dad I knew as his daughter.